Welcome to the 2021 A.G. Gaston Conference. This virtual experience is for business owners, educators, community leaders, and anyone passionate about African American economic empowerment. You will hear business experts share their experiences and challenge others to further success. Get ready to excel together.
Hello, I'm Clara Green, Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Regions Bank. It is my honor to welcome each of you to the 2021 A.G. Gaston Conference. For many years, Regions has been fortunate to take part in this annual event dedicated to elevating African American entrepreneurship. Arthur George Gaston, for whom this event is named, is known as the Entrepreneur of the Century. A.G. Gaston blazed his own trail as a prominent business owner and leader in the Jim Crow South. At Regions, we understand that as a company, we are only as strong as the customers and communities we serve. That is why, over the last 3 years, we have expanded our focus to include community development and economic inclusion through targeted investments in small businesses and nonprofit organizations. A.G. Gaston's example of commitment continues to inspire us. His belief in the importance of economic empowerment remains relevant in 2021. As we gather virtually for an exciting 2 days of learning, our hosts, Gaynell Jackson and Bob Dickerson, have organized a great lineup of guests to share their insights and experiences. On behalf of the Regions leadership team, thank you for all that you do to create jobs, spur innovation, and elevate communities while paving the way for the future entrepreneurs that are African American.
We can meet.
I miss you too.
Not as much as I do.
Fall in love. Even get a mortgage on our phone.
This is it.
Regions has a world-class digital mortgage experience. But if you need extra advice on life's biggest purchase, our mortgage loan officers can help you brave the beginning.
Good morning and welcome to the 17th Annual A.G. Gaston Conference. I'm Deborah Nelson of Elevate Communications, and I'm so honored to return this year as your MC. Over the years, the A.G. Gaston Conference has been a place where business leaders and entrepreneurs connect. It has been a place where businesses learn and develop better business practices, and it has been the place where people can go and feel inspired. Over the last 17 years, this conference has empowered African Americans to excel in entrepreneurship and business ownership. The A.G. Gaston Conference serves as a platform where seasoned leaders, business owners, and emerging new entrepreneurs can share their experiences, as well as foster an environment of celebration and empowerment. Although we can't be together in person, I know that the same spirit that has carried us for the last 17 years is right here today virtually. Now, I can talk all day about the A.G. Gaston Conference, but we have so much in store for you over the next 2 days. So, without further ado, please welcome to the virtual stage the A.G. Gaston Conference co-host and Birmingham's own Bob Dickerson.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you to all of you who tuned in to watch the 17th Annual A.G. Gaston Conference. I'm so excited to be here with you, and it is my hope that you will leave this conference inspired, motivated, and with a renewed spirit to promote change, not only in our business community, but in the world around you. In 1996, the year A.G. Gaston died, I started the Birmingham Business Resource Center, the Myriad Gospel Music Countdown, and attended a Black Enterprise Magazine Black Business Expo. It was at the expo that I first had the idea of establishing an event named for the iconic A.G. Gaston, who would soon be named Black Enterprise's Entrepreneur of the 20th Century. Now, although it took the better part of a decade to host the first A.G. Gaston Conference, I never lost my desire to do so. By 2004, I had developed a close working relationship with Gaynell Adams Jackson, who, along with her husband Vernon, had launched Advanced Planning Services. I shared my idea with Gaynell, and as it's been said many times, the rest is history. 17 years and 17 conferences later, our mission has remained constant. Celebrate the life and accomplishments of the great businessman, the Black Titan, A.G. Gaston, whose story rivals those of Carnegie, Morgan, and Rockefeller, and whose contributions to our community, our city, our state, and our nation are still paying dividends. Then, as we celebrate Gaston, also focus on our economic empowerment through enterprise development, understanding that successful business ownership is a strategy for closing the racial wealth gap. One vision, one cause, elevating African American entrepreneurship is arguably more important today than it was in 1996 when I envisioned this conference, and in 2005 when Gaynell and I launched it. Now, this year's a tad bit different than previous ones. This pandemic has forced many of us to become more innovative in the ways we do business and also in the ways we serve our community. We didn't want this pandemic to pause the mission of the A.G. Gaston Conference, and we are so happy that you're taking the time to be with us for the next 2 days. In fact, we have a few hot ticket items to give away, so be sure that you're engaged in the comments, letting us know your thoughts about the conference. And I'll ask you, does anyone want a new iPad? Well, if so, stay tuned and engage with us. Now, at this time, I want to give a special shout out to our fabulous sponsors: Regions Bank, Renaissance Bank, BBVA, the Birmingham Times, Wells Fargo, Iberia First Horizon, Alabama Power Company, Discover, PNC Bank, the Birmingham Waterworks Board, Valley National Bank, South State Bank, Brassfield and Goree LLC, Service First Bank, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama, and so many others. We really appreciate your continued support in helping us keep this conference going again year after year. So thank you all so much. Now, each year the A.G. Gaston Award is presented to individuals and corporations who use their resources to meet the needs of the community. They've all distinguished themselves as champions working tirelessly to benefit others. Now, 2 organizations have been selected as the 2021 A.G. Gaston Award recipients. It is my pleasure to present Regions Bank as the 2021 A.G. Gaston Award recipient.
On behalf of all the team at Regions Bank, we thank you for this honor, and more than that, for the opportunity to be part of this conference once again. For many years, Regions has supported the annual A.G. Gaston Conference because we firmly believe in the importance of elevating Black entrepreneurship. We know how crucial small businesses are. They lift up communities by meeting needs, providing jobs, and creating wealth. This is important for every community, but especially for communities that have not always shared in the economic prosperity of our country. And that's why we are committed to supporting programs like the A.G. Gaston Conference that are working to create more inclusive prosperity by providing the tools, the connections, and the resources that Black entrepreneurs need to thrive. Again, thank you for the opportunity to partner with you, and we look forward to supporting the conference and supporting the legacy of A.G. Gaston for many years to come.
Thank you, Leroy, and thank you, Regions, for being a longtime supporter. As a matter of fact, 15 of our 17 years of the A.G. Gaston Conference. Now, up next, I'm thrilled to announce our second recipient of the A.G. Gaston Conference Award, none other than Renaissance Bank.
Hello, I'm Mitch Waycaster, President and CEO of Renaissance Bank. Thank you, Bob, for this recognition. It is with great honor and pride that I accept the A.G. Gaston Award, named for a remarkable business leader and advocate, on behalf of the 2,500 employees of Renaissance Bank. Dr. Gaston was a true business professional whose practices and principles embodied the ideas of community and economic empowerment for all businesses. At Renaissance, we too believe in the guiding principle that economic development begins with community development. Empowering the communities we serve to find financial success is what drives us every day. And creating stronger paths to economic prosperity starts with great partnerships. We've found some great partners in working with the BVRC, Foundation Capital, and Advanced Planning Services to build capacity and advocacy for those communities and businesses that need a financial services institution to listen, understand, and work with them to meet their needs and goals. So again, it is our humble honor to accept this award in recognition of the success that we've found with our partners. But the job of community and economic development is never done, and we look forward to continuing on this journey to improve the financial well-being of the communities we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch, and to everyone at Renaissance Bank for ensuring that our community has what it needs to excel. Now, please join me in congratulating our A.G. Gaston Award recipients.
Thank you so much, Bob, for that lovely introduction and for your constant and consistent support of female entrepreneurs. We are thrilled to have with us again this year the fabulous founder and CEO of Black Girl Ventures, Shelly Bell. Hi, Shelly.
Hi, how are you? I'm glad to
I'm
be here.
doing great. How are you?
I'm good. This is exciting. Another
I
AG Gaston
know.
conference.
I
Awesome.
know. Everybody was so thrilled with you last year. So thank you so much for making time for us again. And although you're not here in person, I know just knowing you that your special brand of energy is going to shine through the screen. So thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so look, I know people didn't come to hear me. We can cut to the chase. And, Shelly, I had the opportunity to meet you when you opened your Black Girl Ventures chapter here in Birmingham. And so I've had the opportunity to hear you speak a lot and just share kind of your experiences and your wisdom. And one of the quotes that I hear you talk about from time to time is a paraphrased quote from, I think, the Richmond Star or something like that. Is that ringing a bell for you?
Mm-hmm.
Could you share that with us and why it's so relevant right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna read it, and then when you think about it today and years ago, right? So, paraphrase: We cannot wait for them. Let us put our shoulders to the wheel, establish and carry out every species of industrial enterprise for ourselves, employing and paying fair wages to our people. Now, that quote was from 100 years ago, published in the Richmond Star. This was 1882, but it sounds like we would have read that a month ago, last week, in the paper, in a relevant paper today. And it's so unfortunate to think about like the path to business ownership in America, where working the land has not equated to owning the land. And we know that entrepreneurship is one of America's pillars, but also knowing that it is a path to ownership. And throughout history, people took that window of laws changing to really create something. So I think it is what we're looking at: diversity, equity, and inclusion today. It doesn't seem we've made some strides, but we still got a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that, the pandemic in 2020 certainly put a lot of those disparities on display. We could talk, I think, a long time about those disparities, but I'd like to start with how you break down the US economy and how kind of this seems like a Black problem, but it really impacts the country when Black prosperity is allowed to be so much lower, the gap allowed to be so wide between white families and Black families. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we can send cars to the moon, but we have not figured out how to close the wealth gap. How are we making all these advances in certain areas and not in other areas? I mean, Black Americans have never had equal ability to reap the benefits of business ownership. If you think about it, it's only been about 60 years that Black people have been able to generate wealth uninterrupted. Only 60 years. And if you consider subprime lending, then we're talking about 10 years. And property ownership and ownership of different kinds of property, whether it be IP or physical property, like these are paths to ownership, business ownership, paths to wealth. the median white family's wealth is more than 10 times the wealth of a median Black family's. And it is no longer true that the U.S. economy can thrive without Black participation. I mean, if it was the case that this was an equal amount of people generating business revenue for their homes, we would see a 1% increase in the GDP. Now, some people may be like, GDP, you hear it on the news all the time. They're talking about the GDP. Well, what is that? A country's GDP is gross domestic product. And it really is just the value of all of the goods and services that are happening in that country. That's what's really keeping that economy thrive. So considering that pre-pandemic, Black women were starting businesses at 6 times the national average. Well, that's a nice amount of businesses to be starting and contributing to the country. So why wouldn't we give them equitable access to capital in order to grow something that can keep local economies thriving? Underrepresented founders hire more underrepresented people. Therefore, not only does it contribute in terms of just like cash flow moving around, but we're talking about keeping people employed and infusing capital into people's homes.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned uninterrupted success earlier. What did you mean by that?
What I mean is it feels like, or can feel like, over the course of history, and it's true, not just feel like, but I use the word feel because we feel the weight of every one of the incidents over the course of history that's happened to stop Black businesses from running. I mean, a story that I will tell is about a man named S.B. Fuller, who actually, during the Great Depression, was selling soap from door to door. And then, created this like whole group of people who are also selling soap from door to door. So now you got him creating wealth. He's creating wealth for other people. They're keeping capital in their pockets during the Depression because guess what? Everybody's going to use soap, right? Well, he gained, made advances in this business idea. And then he went on to buy a beauty company, a cosmetic company from a white man. But they kept it quiet. So nobody knew that he had bought this business from this white guy, right? So what happens is he hires all these people, thousands of people across the country, Black and white, are now working for S.B. Fuller in these stores. So he decides he's going to have a celebration for his employees. And so he comes out and he's Black, right? And so the white workers were so upset that they were working for a Black man that they boycotted the stores and then had those stores shut down basically because not only did they decide not to work there, but they also told all their people and friends not to shop there. Why? Like that is a huge interruption to this man's legacy, to what he's building, to his businesses. I mean, even, we're at the A.G. Gaston conference, even A.G. Gaston's motel was bombed. Mm-hmm. That's a huge interruption to what you're doing. I mean, you have Greenwood, you have, Tulsa, Oklahoma, you have these places, Durham, North Carolina, these places where people were building, Birmingham, building their wealth. And saying, hey, just leave us alone over here. You give us a window, we're going to go over here. We're going to do our thing. We don't need to bother you. We're good folks. We just want to make our money. But that has constantly been interrupted by violence. And I think nowadays, though, it's not so much direct violence, right? But there's still the psychological trauma of that hanging over our heads where it's like, we can gain, but will somebody come and take it? Have we gained enough to where we're fully established? This type of thing is constantly affecting how we grow businesses day to day. And that's why efforts like Black Girl Ventures, efforts like the Birmingham Business Resource Center, like these types of things are so important, not only for the resources that we give, but for the inspiration, for the psychological support that says, keep going because you can do this and we will get there, right? If you think that you can walk out of your house any day and get killed by the police, it's hard for you to think long term. It's really hard for you to think like in 10 years. You're thinking I could die tomorrow, which then creates habits that also don't lend to having really great wealth generation or building businesses. Because you can't think about a lot of these, the white founders or founders with wealth, they're thinking about 10 years. So if they lose a few tomorrow, okay, if they need to grow their company in the long term, okay, they got a bit of a cushion to fall back on. And we just have not historically had it as a community.
Amazing. You said a lot there. And I think there's so much to unpack. The psychological kind of factors that go into being an entrepreneur, period, right? And then they're compounded by these other issues that we face. I want, though, because you have another spin on how we look at where we are currently. COVID-19 certainly interrupted business, and not in a violent way, but perhaps in a totally different way that we probably don't even know the magnitude of. But I've heard you talk about our superpowers and how in times like this, those can be kind of called forth. Can you share a little bit with us about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think I don't know if you've been seeing the reports of like aliens supposed to land in California the other day, and like there's the first communication with them, and then there was a day, I don't know if you saw the things online where they talked about like, oh, the day that there was a weird moon movement in the sun, and like, oh, this is the day that Black people are gonna get superpowers. And I thought to myself, like, we already got superpowers. If there are aliens out there, then it's probably the mothership coming to save us. But sales, and we don't talk about it as much now as it has been talked about over the course of history in America in general, right? Because I want to keep the context around America, right? Like we're always minimized in a way to like Black people and like Black community and like Deep South and like Chicago Black people and then like Philly Black people, like, and it's like we are all collectively experiencing the pandemic. And what we're having to do because of that is different depending on what your circumstances are. So when I think about the personality of like what SB Fuller did, but even what Madam CJ Walker did, which was this idea of sales, going out and just using your personality to sell. And I would say that's even something that we experience in entertainment. We're so great at it because we could put all of our personality into it. We have the personality to create the movement in other people. And so the sales training is actually one of the, in my opinion, modern day gaps right now in across entrepreneurship and just business in general. Like sales has gotten a little bit more quiet, but at one point, like sales, that's what you want it to be. I mean, it's still a very key role in a business. It's just not talked about in the same way, but everything was about salespeople. Like at some point, you talking 50s and 60s, you had, whole posters of people like the vacuum cleaner salesman, and everybody was focused on this idea of sales. Well, sales is a personality. It's a skill set. It's a muscle that you work. The understanding of how to communicate and thinking about how someone will hear you such that you can push a product forward. And we think about present day and we think about social media. That's also a form of sales. We have to be careful, though, to not let the algorithms intimidate us into thinking that it's not still about your personality. It's still about your personality. But it seems like, this thought has been put into the place of like, well, you got to run against an algorithm, right? Like what can you do with sales now? Because you got to, have all your keywords in place. But I would empower and encourage people to get sales training, understand the psychology of sales, because it is something that I feel we inherently have intrinsic to who we are as Black people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really, I think what you're pointing to is the importance of relationships and the fact that business is so predicated, your business success, on relationships. And I wonder, as I think about Madam CJ Walker and SB Fuller, I wonder if the reason we see so many sole proprietorships and businesses that are not, employer businesses, which make more money, is because we haven't focused really on this element that you're talking about of like sales and how we kind of grow our businesses. A lot of the times our business is our job. So we're not really thinking about it in terms of scalability.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. we but again, I think it's all kind of societally fashioned in a way where we got to be able to think above it just because of history. History has played a lot of it's a story that we get played. I mean, think about it. It's Black History Month, right? And the majority of the stories that you're going to see about times in history where we were suffering, and then it will bring it to present day suffering, right? Like, and through that suffering came a lot of really amazing people, really amazing businesses, really amazing efforts, and wealth that did set up, Black people to be at a certain trajectory. So the relationship building part of this is everything. I think that's what people sometimes forget. Like, this is not transactional. It is all about, I mean, transaction is a part of the relationship, but it's not the end all of the relationship. And it
sounds like
you're right.
You're also saying reframing the narrative. Like, it's not always about suffering, but there's something else going on there too.
And it's not right. And it's not always about suffering to gain. Right. So I think like that's the other part that we've kind of adapted some, throughout our trauma. It's just like, oh, well, I'm doing bad now, but watch how I, bounce back. And then you bounce back and then you're like, okay, so how do I bounce further than this? Right. Like, if nothing's affecting me, like, the starter from the bottom mentality is great in a song, but we want you to at some point go from something to something, right? People go from something to something way more times than they go from nothing to everything. And I think that's just a reality that we got to figure out how we support each other through as well, and have more empathy. I think that's another place that we can sometimes be lacking, is like empathy with each other and sitting with each other versus kind of questioning each other or being insecure about working together.
I think that's one of the great things about Black Girl Ventures. You are constantly celebrating the work that women are doing around the country, and then the work that partners are doing to help you support these women. And so you've talked about empathizing with each other and sitting with each other. But as institutions and individuals are constantly asking now, what can we do to help? How can we support? What do you think is really important for those people to think about or to do, even more so, to like see change actually happen in this space?
I think one major thing that people can do is to intentionally, the corporations and the banking industry and the larger kind of giants in business can intentionally become customers of smaller businesses. And that is diversifying your supplier pipeline. That is inviting more people to the table, but not even to your table. Create a table for them that sits next to yours. Like, bring them to your table and then let them actually create more tables. So it's like cultivating creativity. Now that the workplace is home, treating, having more empathy, and training and feedback for all people and everyone inside of your organization, encouraging entrepreneurship, seeing entrepreneurship as a career. That you should have the right to be able to flow in and out of entrepreneurship as what makes sense to keep your family afloat. And that for, Black and brown people everywhere to understand that entrepreneurship is a part of your birthright as well. And that you can do this, and there is a space for you to do this with the corporations, with going direct to customer, with a business model that really works for you.
That's great, Shelly. I think that's a great place to end. I would love, though, to just hear a little bit about what Black Girl Ventures is up to, what you're up to in Birmingham, what you're up to around the country, and how we can continue to support your efforts also.
Oh my goodness, so many amazing things. One, just like shout out to the Black Girl Ventures Birmingham chapter. You have been amazing in just working with us and being instrumental in pumping out really great opportunities to your community. So our plan next is we have a fellowship program that we're transitioning into. This will be a 9-month intensive program focused on business ownership and business leadership, because we want to amplify the voices and actually move people into understanding how to navigate the ecosystem. I'm going to basically take everything that I've learned from working with all these corporations and instill it into a curriculum that we are now going to be pulling women into, or opening up for women to be a part of. You will receive a $10K stipend for being a part of that. And the goal for Birmingham is for us to launch one there later in the year. First up, though, we will be launching Philly, Miami, and a couple other cities around the country. So stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram at blackgirlventures.org, on Twitter at bgirlventures. You can also follow me at I am Shelly Bell everywhere, all in all places online.
Thank you so much, Shelly. It's been great seeing you. We can't wait until you get to visit us here again in Birmingham.
Yes, I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Make today a look for it after my meeting day. Make today a getting to know your neighbors day. Make today a taking the back roads day. Make today a speaking a universal language day. Make today a finding your forever home day. No matter the day, PNC has the financial tools and technology to help. PNC Bank. Make today the day.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Jenkins Utomi, Community Development Banking Manager with PNC. I'm so glad to be here with all of you today. For 17 years, the A.G. Gaston Conference has been an essential resource for Alabama's African American business community. The event this year looks a little bit different, but I'm certain it will deliver the same exceptional programming and engagement opportunities that have made it so successful. While the pandemic has transformed how we interact in our daily lives, it has not changed PNC's commitment to supporting our communities and our customers. Whether we're providing SBA funds to small businesses or supporting working families with relief and childcare resources, we continue to help drive meaningful and sustainable change in the communities we serve, even through unprecedented times. For nearly a decade, our local team has worked closely with leading community organizations like the BBRC to support small business development, economic empowerment, and increased access to capital, because we believe that we are only as strong as the communities we serve, which is why our responsibility to support the small business community has never been more important. We are proud to continue our support for this event, and thank you for watching.
Thank you, Michelle, for those wonderful remarks, and to PNC for being a longtime partner of the A.G. Gaston Conference. We're just getting started, and our first panel is Growing Black Business and Their Importance in Building Our Economy. Featured panelists include Shelly Bell, who we just heard from. She's a system disruptor, business strategist, serial entrepreneur, and founder of Black Girl Ventures. She's joined by Dr. Anthony C. Hood, Executive Vice President, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for First Horizon Bank. Councilman John Hilliard of the Birmingham City Council, and moderator and co-host of the A.G. Gaston Conference, Bob Dickerson. Take it away, Bob.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for introducing, bringing on this fine panel of individuals to discuss our role. And we all have a role in growing Black businesses. And I think that we all have to embrace our roles. We have to execute that which is incumbent upon us to execute. And we certainly have people on our discussion today that understand those roles and that understand how to execute on those roles. I am so happy to be joined by the speaker that you just heard, Shelly Bell, Shelley with Black Girl Ventures and an entrepreneur, a great speaker in her own right. Along with Shelley will be Counselor John Hilliard. Counselor Hilliard representing Birmingham's 9th City Council District, and a former educator, now banker, if I can call him that, but also Dr. Anthony C. Hood, who is joining us on the council. Shelley, would you just like to say hello again to our audience?
Yeah, hi. I'm Shelley Bell, the founder CEO of Black Girl Ventures. We work to create access to capital for Black and brown women founders. We have efforts across 12 cities, Birmingham being one of them. We also are the largest entrepreneur support organization on the East Coast. We funded 130 women, and our founders represent about $10 million in revenue and 3,000 jobs across the country.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much. And the Honorable John Hilliard, how about greeting our audience this morning?
Wow, thank you for this platform. Of course, I'm Councilman John Hilliard. I represent District 9 in Birmingham. I'm also Chair Economic Development, and I'm excited to be here with such a distinguished panel. And good morning to everyone.
Thank you, thank you. And Dr. Hood, Anthony, go right ahead.
Thanks, Bob. I'm Anthony C. Hood. I serve as the Executive Vice President and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for First Horizon Bank. It's a regional bank that stretches 11 states from Houston down to Miami, all the way up to North Carolina. So great to be on the panel today.
Well, thank you so much. So in Shelley's talk, we just heard her mention a couple of things, and I want to just have us all give an opinion or give some feedback or share your thoughts on this. But Black participation is needed for the U.S. economy to thrive. Now, before I kick it, and Shelley, I think I'll save you for last since this was part of your remarks. And I'll start with kind of go in reverse order and start with Dr. Hood. But I'll preface this by referencing a book that I read and often refer to, Minority Business Success. It was written almost 20 years ago by a brother named James Lowry and a guy named Leonard Greenhouse. They were actually professors at Dartmouth, and they said that the U.S. economy is dependent on minority. Now they use minority, we're using Black, but dependent on minority business success because minorities, Black and brown people, are becoming the dominant force in our population and the economy. So just looking at Black business and Black participation being critical to the success of the U.S. economy, I'd like to have us all, and starting with you, Dr. Hood, to just give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, my thoughts is, when you look at our demographers from the Census Bureau, we know that by the year 2045, we'll be a majority minority country. Then when you look at the African-American population, we make up somewhere around 13-14% of the population, but we account for about $1.4 trillion in spending power. And then particularly those of us who are in the Southeast, the largest concentrations of African-Americans are in the Southeast. So if you're a business that is participating in the East Coast, or particularly in the Southeast, this is just a really good business case for you to be able to tap into that spending power, and it's a power that's growing. When you look at those that are under the age of 16, over half of the people who are under the age of 16 identify as a racial minority. So for those companies that want to be sustainable going forward over the next 10 to 15 years, this is a market that you need to make sure that you're serving.
Very good, very good. Councilor Hilliard, I'd like to get your feedback and for you to weigh in on that the necessity of Black participation in the economy growing.
Absolutely. Well, we know that the world is going colored, that Black is becoming the melting pot of the United States and of the economy. So with that, you see all of our television networks, marketing is turning towards people of color and Black Americans. Without a doubt, we can see with our elections we just had with Tamara and our vice president and all of the other people that now being recognized to be an African American is the way to be in America today. We're shown throughout our Southern Black Belt with all of the Black institutions and Black fraternities and sororities, that we're strong in our buying power. And now we have risen to the point where Blacks are being recognized around the world. So, of course, our dollar is important. And I'm excited at this time to be in this place in America so that we will be able to show our physical and our economical power.
Thank you so much, Council. And Shelley, you know, I borrowed that from your remarks, and I made a few notes from your remarks, but that was one of the ones that stuck out to me. So I'd just like to have you elaborate just a bit more on that.
Yeah, you know, I think over the course of history, it is true that when the gates open for us, we're just going to get more and more closer to gathering our own equity, right? We're not going to wait for someone to decide that they should give us something. We will go out, we'll make our own way as long as we have the space to do so. I think the internet and the development of technology has allowed us to be able to go direct to consumer. And so we got to skip some steps. So we didn't have to worry about, you know, what it meant to go through some of the more slower, the government or different corporations. And I mean, even with that, though, we're going to see ourselves still needing to go and have them as customers. The federal government is one of the largest customers in the world. And so I think we're going to see ourselves needing to go that route to get larger capital. But for now, the gates are open and we're running toward, you know, whatever the finish line is or the light at the end of the tunnel. And we have so much space to do that. And I think, you know, it's just evolution, in my opinion. I mean, the more and more space we get to do so, the more and more rights open up, the more and more people have more empathy and understanding of the racial divide, the better off we are, because we're going to go for those opportunities.
Well, you know, we just, you know, I chuckle sometimes when I think about the past summer of the unrest and sort of this awakening, this reckoning with, you know, the fact that Black people and Black businesses have been subjected to economic deprivation for a long, long time in this country. So let's talk about how do we, in your opinions, how do we correct the ills, correct the wrongs, correct the problems that have been created for our companies and for our people economically? Councilor Hilliard, I'd like to start with you to just talk about how do we start to correct some of those things that have not been fair and really have not growing business.
Well, first of all, let me say this. We know that America was given to the government, came in and gave people thousands of acres of land. And like the young lady said earlier, is that our economy has been based on a lot of these folks have unearned wealth. I often think about the wealth gap between us is so huge, is that the government is going to have to play a part in order for us to be on an even playing field. So it's within my thoughts that government can do things for the people of color because we deserve it. We've built this country. I realize that we're very intellectual, we're smart, but we need some type of an advantage also for the work and the labor that we have done. So it's my hope is that the government will play a huge role in giving African Americans an opportunity that they deserve because of what we've done. So I'm hoping with our new administration that they would look at maybe we have a banker on here. I would love to see him not just work at a bank, but he deserves to own a bank. He's played that role in his society. This young lady deserves to be put at the top of the 1%. We have to be made whole at some point. I think that's something we have to address because we're all intellectually smart. We're intelligent. We know what to do. But if we had the advantages that some of our others have had over the last century, then we would be in a much different situation that we're in now. We'll be able to provide opportunity. So I think the federal government is going to have to do some extraordinary things besides just talking to give African Americans. And I think that's not just giving you money, but giving you opportunity, providing ways for us to be made whole.
Wow. Thank you so much. Shelley, how do we, what do we do to cure the ills and to repair the damage?
I think correct is a interesting word. Like, how do we correct it? I think cure is also an interesting word because I think we typically treat the symptoms and we're not getting to the root of what's going on. You know, I think we also have to understand that politics is a window, right? Like, you got 4 years, you know, and then hopefully you come back, or 2 years, you know, local in some cases, or, you know, statewide, but, you know, and then you come back or not. And so in that 4 years, the local government, state governments, federal governments are doing what they think, which is not always possible, to prioritize. And I think that sometimes we vote people in with an agenda, with their agendas that we agree with, and then the agendas don't get played out, and that falls heavily on our spirits, and then we kind of give up. So I think that, you know, for me, it's a little less about correct, and it's more about getting out of my way. And it goes back to, like, Black people have so much ingenuity and innovation. If you just get out of our way, like if you just let the laws be what they are, that make sense to promote us. I don't know that our federal government in any administration is going to make the moves that really give us our 40 acres and a mule. So my optimism has to lie in what are the rules that need to be revisited for what it means to allow everyone an opportunity. And it's funny to me because we can send a car to the moon, but we somehow can't figure out inclusion. That doesn't make sense. You got the best scientists having a satellite circle the globe, but you can't figure out diversity and inclusion. Like I'm always puzzled by that thought. So I think, you know, what our federal government has to do is step back and look at themselves and say, well, what level of experts have we actually put around this? Like, what level of community building, ecosystem builders, leaders have we actually included that are thinking about everyone? And then we just have to revisit. I don't know that we have the wherewithal to correct. I do think we can cure.
Thank you. Dr. Hood, I'd like to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think Shelley is right on point. Like, we just have to make a decision. You know, when this coronavirus situation came, we made a decision that we was going to put money into the economy, and lo and behold, we found trillions of dollars to be able to do that. We said we needed to find a vaccine, something that usually takes years, and we did it in a few months. So when you tell people of color, or when you tell women, well, we just, you know, it's just going to take time, it's just something that just doesn't sit right with us. So I think it just takes intentionality. And we have to recognize that the situation that we're in right now was tacit agreement between not only government officials, but also business owners, the faith community for hundreds of years. And so I think it's going to have to take those same types of partnerships and collaboration between corporations, nonprofits, government officials, even the educational sector, to put us on a path to equity and inclusion.
So let me, and this was not one of the planned questions, but let me try to stick this one in and give some quick remarks. And I do agree that there has to be intentionality from the power structure and no excuses about what can't be done. But when we leave the power structure, the representatives of the power structure in position to evaluate the progress, not the process, but the progress, and then to make excuses themselves as to why it didn't work. We got to fix that. And I'd like for you all to react, because this is just me talking now, that it's almost like you're going to let one of the teams keep score. Well, you know who's going to win. So just react to that real quick before I get back to what my initial questions were supposed to be. Shelley, I'll go to you.
You just brought up, and I think it's not brought up as often as it needs to be. And I think that there should be. Now, this is, you know, I love that you brought it up too, because it's a space for innovation. And for someone out there, it's actually a space for you to start a company. All right. Like, what is the evaluation? And actually, you know, pushing forward policy that says the evaluation should not lie within the hands of the organizing entity. that the evaluation of the government, of the federal government, should come from an outside entity. I mean, we see this all the time when it comes to school systems, right? The school system keeps failing or not, making whatever the quote unquote grade is. They call in an external auditor. We have to do that with our businesses. We have an external auditor that comes in. So why doesn't our federal government have any type of external auditor that is community? I think that would be true ecosystem building, and that will also be true democracy. Right now, we're kind of leaving it up to, do they get voted back in or vote or not? I think it can get tricky though, because algorithms and, open opinions gets a little tricky when it comes to like personal emotion. And that's one of the things we never account for when it comes to politics or like the governing bodies. We saw all of the emotion happen throughout the White House over the last 4 years. So much emotion, right? Everything reacting off of emotion being shown in a way in the government that we hadn't necessarily wanted to pay attention to, that a lot of this is built off of human emotion. And when people can start rejecting, we never know whether or not they're honestly rejecting or if they're rejecting based off of just like, they just didn't like the thing you said yesterday. And I think that is a challenge. So this could be perfectly good efforts. So how do we, because then you need to vet out the people that are vetting, it gets tricky, but I do agree with you that that could be a place to innovate.
Yeah. So Dr. Hood, I want to get your quick thoughts on that, and then you, Counselor, hear you. Dr. Hood.
I think we have to be very equitable in our participation, participatory budgeting. I know that's a term that we use in government, but I think it applies in a lot of different scenarios. I think from the national level all the way down to the local level, those who have the influence over policy are the people who control budgets. And I think that is unfair to those who may not have the wherewithal. So all we're doing is exacerbating the inequalities that already exist with us. So having people at the table who don't have quote unquote influence, don't have huge budgets and things like that, I think that drives a lot more equity into our decision making.
Okay. Counselor Hill.
Absolutely. I think platforms such as this will help open that up. And I agree with both of the speakers that have spoken a moment ago. You have to be intentional about what you want to do. I never thought about it the way the young lady said, but think about this. They can put a person on the moon. They can have a satellite circle the planet, and we can't solve just problems we have with all of this. I call it just disparity between the wealthy and the 1%. It's just amazing to me to see how wealthy some of these people are. And when I look at our African Americans and realize that we built the country and that we're owed economic inclusion, it's mind-boggling. So I hope that our government, and I intend on pushing it throughout this new administration, 100% every chance I get, we need people that look like us, given some advantages and some opportunities that that our ancestors have died for and that we so greatly deserve. So I'm going to be pushing for young people like this young lady, Dr. Hood. I would love to see him own a string of banks. We shouldn't just have a Dr. Gaston or others every 100 years. We need to have more people like these young people at the forefront and at the table. And yes, they need to be given something from our government and our business community to help bring us to another level.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to try to squeeze in as much as we can in the next few minutes. There are a couple of places I wanted to go, and I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Gaston because he started a business around 100 years ago, and he still has been more successful than anybody else in Alabama, any black person in Alabama, which is an indictment on us. But I think it also, and I accept it, and I think we all have to. But I think that brings us to really talking about something that we kind of touched on. But maybe we can elaborate more on how we build the ecosystem that really is supportive and nurturing for the businesses that we care about. And Anthony, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, I think first of all, we need to define what is the ecosystem. And we need to have transparency and accountability. Once we do an actual assessment of the ecosystem, we need to make sure that everybody knows who's a part of it. And then what are the goals around the ecosystem? How are we developing it? And are we doing that with equity and inclusion and diversity baked in? If not, then I think we're going to do just more of the status quo.
Shelley, I want to go in a different direction. Thank you, Dr. Hood. I want to go in a different direction because we are running out, and I really, you know, you said so many things in your talk. I want you to talk about, in case somebody missed this, that blind spot, building that business in a blind spot. Something that Gaston did was he found needs and filled them, so he operated in the blind spots. And so I'd like for you just to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, as Black people, we have, again, our spirit of entrepreneurship is always thriving. It's like alive and well all the time. And so, you know, lean into that. There's places when people are, you know, like I was saying in my talk, when people are discounting you, not looking in your direction, that is actually an opportunity to build something. And I mean, you know, I love Birmingham, and I've had the pleasure of working with women there and getting to know the, you know, the ecosystem or where the infrastructure has its challenges. And, you know, I would say that there's so much room to innovate in Birmingham. You know, Anthony mentioned like the ecosystem, like what is it? Well, a lot of that work has been happening around the country. And so I think, like, you know, it's kind of a testament to like history that in some areas of the country, not necessarily having that information, that the other parts of the country may be like, oh yeah, we're doing blah, blah, blah. Like, and I think that it is, but there's a whole book, a workbook and all kinds of things on what an ecosystem is, how to build one. And we have to start like activating those things. But that's a blind spot in Birmingham. A blind spot in Birmingham is that there's not a lot of ecosystem infrastructure. And this is not, what I'm saying right now is not popular. And I might get shunned out of Birmingham for saying it. But the reality is, if you're an entrepreneur out there, there's so much room to innovate in Birmingham when it comes to the entrepreneurial ecosystem, because it's actually not as strong as some other parts of the country. And so look at other examples of what's happening around the country, around the world, and actually figure out what parts of that can work in your city. You know, there's other blind spots in science, you know, in health, in healthcare, that people are not looking at because everybody has determined that it's too hard to do, that it's too difficult to move, that we can't do it. The laws say, well, the pandemic taught us that there's no such thing as something that we can't do. You know, going back to what one of my fellow panel members said, like, we can do what we want. We just have to make the decision to do so. And, you know, that would be me empowering and encouraging, you know, the governments around the country locally to be thinking about what it means to be an ecosystem builder or build an ecosystem. I think it starts with the AG Gaston Conference and conversations like these.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Councilor Hilliard, the last question, you know, economic freedom can be achieved by succeeding in business. The racial wealth gap can be closed by succeeding in business. And I know you, right, your council seat and other government officials see that. Can you just talk more about, as we're about to close out, why it's so important for us to find or incubate and nurture that next group of AG Gastons that are coming on behind us?
Wow, that's exciting. First of all, let me say this. I think we have to be intentional about what we want to do. What I find a whole lot of times is that as African-American political leaders, we get a lot of young folks, they come in and they want to be, I say they want to assimilate into, we don't need to assimilate into their model of what's being done. We have to be intentional about creating young African-American wealth builders. And we kind of have to do it like Maynard Jackson did it in Atlanta. We have to bring them around to the table, sit our young African-American males and females around in their prospective business, bring corporate America to Alabama to the table and say, look, these are the people that we want to see involved and we want to see making money and working and your prospective ideas and include them. So many times we have a lot of these builders that come to Birmingham. They come before our committee. They want to build hotels. They want us to lift the rules so they can go up farther, higher. They want us to change the zoning. And you look down at their business plan, and there's no one at the table that look like us. And I ask them, What's wrong with this picture? We can't make you, there are laws in place. We can't make you include us. But you talking to me, what do I tell the people that I represent once we give you the right to do this and you don't even include us in the economic chain of what's happening? What I think is that our political leaders have to be intentional about what they want to do, and we don't need to hide it. The fact is, I agree with Councilman Hort, who talks about African American inclusion all the time. We need to know and see that there are people that look like us, and let me say this, people that we know. Because so many times they'll bring in people from this city, that city. These are people that they feel comfortable with. We need to see people at the table that we feel comfortable with. And that's my pick. Let's be intentional about what we want to do. Let's be intentional about talking to these corporations and companies about including us in their plans. And of course, we're bringing plans to the table and working with the things that we are trying to do.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all. Shelley Bell, serial entrepreneur and computer scientist and founder of Black Girl Ventures. Dr. Anthony C. Hood, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for New Horizon, First Horizon. I always want to call it something wrong, but anyway, First Horizon Bank, and City Council member representing District 9 in the city of Birmingham, John Hilliard. Thank you all for your insight. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being part of the A.G. Gaston Conference. And thank you all for looking, for listening, and for your role, the audience, in helping to support this organization and this conference. Thank you so much.
Renaissance Bank, understanding you.
Hello, I'm Tracy Morant Adams with Renaissance Bank. It is certainly my privilege as Chief Strategist for Community Development, Social Responsibility, and Diversity to join you for this amazing empowerment program and bring greetings on behalf of Renaissance Bank and our President and CEO, Mitch Waycaster. It has been our company's honor to support this conference for many years because of what it represents in an effort to elevate minority business growth and who it represents in celebrating the life and legacy of one of America's most successful businessmen, Dr. A.G. Gaston. As a community partner, we do believe at Renaissance that community development is a catalyst to fill social needs, to help ensure community and economic parity for all. The efforts of this conference to champion economic parity and opportunity through diverse and inclusive business prospects should be modeled by others and applauded by lending institutions and other advocacy organizations, given the significant minority business needs existing in today's landscape. At Renaissance, we are committed to meeting those needs for all African American businesses and all businesses, filling needs that support small business growth, economic empowerment, and capacity building for entrepreneurs. And we are committed in doing so in a fair and just way. Let me conclude by giving recognition to Mr. Bob Dickerson and Ms. Gaynell Adams Jackson, who saw a need and through visionary excellence worked to fill it by organizing this conference. I know firsthand of the sincere commitment these two leaders have for minority businesses and entrepreneurs. They have done a tremendous job for 17 years in creating awareness to help our small businesses grow, thrive, and succeed. Greetings again to all.
Thank you, Tracy, and Renaissance Bank for all that you do to support the mission of the A.G. Gaston Conference. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling inspired. After a year like 2020, we know we must all have a plan to succeed. With that being said, let's move into this next panel, the Green Power Money in Action panel, featuring Brian Hamilton, CEO of Trillion Communications, Nolanda Hatcher, Member Manager of Studio 2H Design, Selena Rogers Dickerson, President of SARCOR, and moderated by the one and only Jackie Jones, CEO of One Degree Marketing.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for those wonderful introductions. As she stated, my name is Jackie Jones. I'm CEO of One Degree Marketing, and welcome to the Green Power Money in Action panel. So let me welcome our guests, Ms. Selena Rogers Dickerson, Ms. Nolanda Hatcher, and Mr. Brian Hamilton. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing today?
Hello, fine, thank you.
Hi, hello.
So excited for you all to join me in this panel today. We really want to talk in detail about your personal journeys, how that plays into money and different levels of discipline that are required to get where you've gotten. And so I just want to, again, I know we've already done introductions formally, but I would love for you all to take a moment just to introduce yourself in your own words. We'll start with Ms. Selena Rogers Dickerson.
Hello again. My name is Selena Rogers Dickerson. I am the president of SARCOR LLC, which is a civil and transportation engineering firm headquartered in Birmingham. We specialize in sustainable solutions for engineering, roadway design, sidewalks, ADA accessibility, as well as construction engineering and inspection. And I also am the owner of Celine LLC, which is a supplier diversity solutions company. And for that company, I primarily help the BJCC with its minority participation efforts for both the stadium and the arena. I'm a mother of a very rambunctious but smart and intelligent 6-year-old, wife, have a few employees here in Birmingham, and we registered as a woman-owned and DBE company. Our DBE registration is in Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, and I've been in business since I got laid off in 2010. Thank you all for having me on board.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to come back to that little tidbit in your introduction about you being laid off and how we have arrived here. So just want to put a pin in that. But next, let's hear from Ms. Nolanda Hatcher.
Thank you. My name is Nolanda Hatcher with Studio 2H Design. We are a full-service architectural firm with headquarters in the 4th Avenue Business District, downtown Birmingham, in the famous Theater Development Building, right next to Eddie Kendricks Park, down the street from Green Acres. So I am, we're a woman-owned, minority-owned firm. I do have a business partner, Craig Hoskins, and we have operated at Studio 2H Design since 2015 when we merged. Previous to that merger, my former firm was NHB Group LLC, and that business I started in 2002, February 15, 2002, as a matter of fact, as a self-employed person and an opportunity to actually do what our mission is at Studio 2H Design every day, which is to provide clients and the community with design excellence beyond expectation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here with us. All right. And last but certainly not least, let's hear from Mr. Brian Hamilton.
Thank you, Jackie. And thank you all for this conference. And certainly pleased to be on a panel with Nolanda and Selena, two entrepreneurs I have great respect for the work that they do and the impact that they have on communities. I'm Brian Hamilton. I'm the CEO of Trillion Communications. Trillion is a national tier 1 supplier of supply chain solutions, primarily in the connectivity industry. So we're happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you again for being here as well. So, you know, clearly all of you have come a very long way in your careers and your company. And, you know, I think that it's important that people understand that you don't just show up overnight in the spaces where you are. And a lot of times, you know, we all make it look so easy that they don't realize how much it took to get there. So I want to begin this conversation just really talking about the level of discipline that is required to make the journey as a small business owner, and what disciplines really, really matter in that journey. Of course, we're going to turn the corner to some financial disciplines, but I really want to hear from you all what you feel like you would say to business owners about the level of discipline that's required to make it this far. So I would love to begin, if Brian would start with answering that for me. What kind of discipline do small business owners really need?
Yeah, Jackie, that's a really good question. You know, I would say, you know, you got to have the ability to stay the course, right? And you have to resist the urge to sort of kind of divert your attention. And you always have to make sure that you've got an end game in mind. And so, to the extent that entrepreneurs and business owners can remain focused on the eventual outcome that they're attempting to achieve, I think that would be what my sort of kind of advice would be, is to, you know, stay the course, be mindful of what you're attempting to achieve, and have a bias for results. So that's my 2 cents from a discipline perspective.
Awesome. Have a bias for results. I love that. And it can be very difficult for people as they work through the process to keep that end in mind. And so there's certainly some level of discipline there. I would love to hear from Ms. Nolanda what you feel like is a strength or a discipline that business owners really need to have on this journey.
Well, I think you need to have a plan for what you want to do, and it needs to be step A, B, C, D plan, but you really need to dream and brainstorm what you want your B, C, D, E, F, all the way through the alphabet to be. So I'm a firm believer that if you fail to plan, you're going to fail. If you don't plan, you're going to fail. And you have to write your plans down. And you have to write your goals down, and it needs to be an annual event. You know, once you have a goal, you need to have a step-by-step plan on reaching those goals. And you need to also be very realistic about your skill set, and what you need as a team to help you complete that plan and those goals.
Good advice. And it's so funny because there's kind of a theme happening here that I think is happening between what Brian just said about seeing that end and what you're saying about having a plan. And so that connected theme of discipline, of knowing where you're going and taking those steps, is so important. Selena, what's your answer to that? What do you feel like is one of the great disciplines you have to have on this journey?
Again, that is an awesome question, and it's something that I have to remind myself of constantly on how to be focused, and a part of the affirmation that my daughter and I do every day. And the big part of being in business, you know, in my opinion, is why are you in business? You know, what is your big why? What is your purpose for even existing in business? And then a mentor of mine told me years ago, we do every day what we truly believe, and everything else is just talk. So once you have big, you know, I read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and then Stephen Covey says to begin with the end in mind, just like Brian and Nolanda said, know what your end is, know what your plan is. But if your actions are not in alignment with that end, and you're just saying what you want or saying what your business is, but you're not actively engaging in those day-to-day tasks that require those fundamental things, those disciplines that you have to do in order to achieve those things. Like, say, for example, a person who may have a full-time job but wants to also be in business one day, you have to be disciplined enough to perform well on your job between those hours that you're working. And then once you get off, you have to be disciplined enough to unplug from the TV, get in some books to help control what's going on between your ears to get the rah-rah out. And because when times get tough and you really have to dig in, you have to be able to lean on something a little bit stronger, like your faith, like your affirmations to yourself, those things, those positive words of encouragement that you tell yourself that I can do all things, I can continue this process, I can continue this journey, I have this bigger why, and I'm not going to stop until after I reach that. And you need to be fluid, because just like Nalanda said, you may have a plan for A, B, and C, but to get to Z, you might hit a pandemic, a recession might hit, but you still have to be flexible enough to know that this is my bigger goal, and persist and be consistent and keep those disciplines regardless of everything that's going on around you, so that you can accomplish that.
Wow. So, you all have said such wonderful things. And I think that, on this journey, again, people, I think, assume that because it's getting done, that it's easy, which we all know that it is absolutely not. But all of you spoke to the things that kind of ground you, like you said, Selena, in the times where things are hardest. And that brings me kind of a great segue to the green, right? To the financial part of that and what discipline it takes financially. It's enough that you have the emotional, pull of things that you may have family or friends pulling at you, or all the things that go into running your business, growing a team, as Nalanda said. But there's a lot of financial decisions that you have to make. And sometimes people get caught up in growth and they start spending the dollars. And so there's a discipline to the finances of. So I want to know now, what financial challenges would you say people should look out for as they grow their business? Because of course we come across funding, or we come across opportunities with bigger checks and things of that nature. But what kind of discipline do business owners really need to have financially as they work to grow their businesses? So I'm actually going to work backwards this time, Selena. I'm going to come right back to you. What do you think are those financial disciplines that people should keep in mind?
Number one, you have to have a good bookkeeper, CPA. If that's not what you do every day, hire somebody to do that. And I am a firm believer from experience that you get what you pay for. And so sometimes you may just have to spend a little bit more in order to do that. As far as the disciplines are concerned, I can tell you about a lesson learned that I have had to experience. Early on, I would say a few years back, about 6 years ago, my company just started taking off, and I was not prepared for the amount of growth. I had to staff up really fast. Things happened around me that I could not control. Other elements, whether it be the political climate, banking and lending up or down, who's in the seat on the other side of the table at the bank. There's so many things that I didn't have control over, but I still had to fulfill contracts. I still had to staff up. I still needed equipment. And the front end of my planning was great to get to that point. But then I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And so we grew really fast. And when the payments start slowing up, we're performing work, but the payments don't come as fast as the payroll in some cases. Me a bond. And so, being able, if I could do it all over again, I would have made sure that I had used other resources or alternative sources of capital to be able to make sure that I could sustainably grow the company and talk to other business leaders. I did talk to some people, but that's where having some of the back office things came into play. Because if I didn't have that piece of the puzzle right, like I thought I did, but I was mistaken. I thought I was doing all the right parts, but it was not until, a year and a half later or so that I was like, oh my gosh, this is not really how it's supposed to be. And so not being ashamed to get that help, and realizing early on that you're going to have to pay someone who really knows what they're doing in order to help your growth. and help you make those intelligent decisions.
That is so true. Outsourcing is so important, especially when it comes to things that affect the journey, right? And so kind of in a similar, but I'm going to kind of change this up a little bit as I come to Nolanda. You know, I think that what Selena is speaking to is probably what everyone has, you know, all of you have had to think about as you grow is that, hey, this great opportunity is here. That's wonderful. I can get to it. But on the other side of that, there are other things that I have to do to sustain that growth or to be, you know, primed to take another contract and things of that nature. So Nolanda, I wonder from you, was there a point in your journey where you had to kind of adjust, or you just, it became blatantly clear to you that there are some financial disciplines that I'm going to have in place, or how I go about that is going to change? Was there a point in your journey where that might have happened?
I will say that I've had, since been in business since 2002, I've had several points of pivot, we'll put it that way, or reimagining how to best use resources to cover, I'm going to say, the promises that we've made contractually. So at the beginning, when it was just me, of course, it's just me, and you can kind of keep the discipline, similar to what Brian said before. You know, maybe you and your family, they have to realize a dream, cut back on certain lifestyle events, certain vacations, in realization of that dream. And then, as Selena said, once you get going, you start staffing up. Not only are you covering your household, but you're responsible for your employees' households and their benefits packages. And to keep good employees around, with options of them going to Brian's company or Selena's company, you want to incentivize them to stay with you. So you want to also help them realize their goals. And I cannot, in all cases, you have to reinvest in your business. You have to maintain an atmosphere where people thrive, they learn, and they grow. And you're also competing with other businesses for that talent. So I will say that financially, as Selena said, having a great banking partner, considering lines of credit for when cash flow may not be what you need it to during certain times of the year. And as you stay in business, you know what those ebbs and flows are historically, and you can look back on it. But starting out, you're just walking through faith, and having people around you who tell you how to do it. So I would say that your banker, your accountant, your attorney, your friends, family, and pastor, the ones that tell you you can do it, that's who you want to listen to. So I know in the space of professional services, cash flow is, you kind of eat what you kill. So it ebbs and flows, and you have to plan for a rainy day, because a rainy day will happen. A pandemic, confirmation, 2020 will happen. So you have to balance and not overspend, and really budget for what you need, but not in a way that restricts you from growth and from doing what you want to do. It's really a balance, and you have to, so you have to have people in your corner who will counsel you toward, realizing those goals and sustaining your business.
Awesome. Yes, I was going to say, I'm glad you said it, because I was going to say, if you all haven't seen a rainy day, you're not telling the truth, because it rained real hard on everybody in 2020. So, hey, we all had to pull out an umbrella last year. I'm excited to know that many businesses are working really hard to continue to push through, what we're enduring. So thank you for that answer, Nolanda. And I think that, again, if you all are listening to this and not hearing the themes here, clearly investing in people like yourself, like the people who are working with you, like the people who are going to advise you, is something that I'm pulling out of that. I hope that you are too. But as we also kind of think about not only the investment in people, Brian, coming to you in this same lane of questioning, but a little different, you mentioned earlier that people should have kind of the end in mind. And so I know that all of you spend your days working, building something right now, right? And so we're working right now. And as Nolanda said, you eat what you kill. When it comes, there goes the money, and you do what you have to do and you budget accordingly. But Brian, I want to hear from you about what are your thoughts around planning for that end that you've envisioned for yourself, both personally and professionally. There are many options out there for what people will do with their businesses, whether they're legacy businesses, if they will continue. But what kind of financial decisions have to go into thinking about that end? What would you say to that?
Yeah, Jackie, very, very good question. I think a couple of things I would say in terms of thinking about how you're going to exit your business. The first thing you got to understand is, what is it that you do that actually makes money, right? Your business actually has to generate capital. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you understand the fundamentals. And when I say fundamentals, just at a real simple level, like, what are your costs, right? What are the things that you can control, the things that you cannot control, your fixed costs? You got to be able to understand that. And a lot of entrepreneurs are not necessarily trained financial or accounting personnel. And I think Selena and Nolanda has already pointed out how important it is to have a group of folks around you, but you got to really understand what your costs are. And then you got to understand that, we've mentioned investing in the business and in people. What does that really mean? That means you got to leave money in the business, right? So that means that, when you start, you may not necessarily be able to pay yourself $1 million a year, right? You've got to continue to grow the balance sheet in your business, leaving the capital in the business so that it grows to a point where you can have a succession plan, right? Whether that is, there's a lot of options, right? There's options to bring other partners in the business. There are ways to incentivize employees. There are folks that may want to leave their business to subsequent generations and their families. And so all those things have to be taken into consideration year after year when you get to a point and when you're starting to decide whether or not you're going to take resources in or out of the business. So, none of us will live forever, and we can't take any of this with us. So we always have to be thinking about, how am I going to perpetuate this entity such that it can take care of its owners, its employees, its customers, and ultimately to have an impact on the community. So it is absolutely necessary to be thinking about, what am I going to do? Who's going to buy this thing from me? What am I building such that it has value for someone else?
So very important. And so thank you for that answer, because it actually brings me to what will be my last question to you all. And I want all of you to answer this exact same question, because as Brian stated, that this is not only, the investment that we speak of and the power that our money has is not just power that affects ourselves and our families. And as Nolanda said, your employees and their families, but also their communities around us. And one thing that we know is that we are responsible for ourselves. We're responsible for the communities that we came from and that we, have family in and friends in and things of that nature. And so I wonder from you all, what do you say to, or what are your thoughts around, and this will be fairly quickly, but what are your thoughts around, let me preface this with this. when it's time to spend money and it's not on your business or yourself, that can be a very hard decision to make, to say, well, let me find an organization or a neighborhood or something of that nature. And so I want to know from you all what advice or what kind of mentality and thinking you think that business owners should have about how they utilize their green power in their communities. So I want to start with Nolanda with this.
You know, annually, being in business for as long as I have, you know, you're on list to donate funds, whether you have it annually or not. So what I do consistently is what I call my community professional services. So because I'm in a service industry, pretty professional service industry, pretty much billable on time, I equate time and money equally. So in addition to financial donations to churches, to nonprofits, my nonprofit of choices are low-income housing development, as well as services for kids through education or scholarship. But in addition to that, I also dedicate time to those organizations. In my positions, I choose to serve as a chairperson of a housing authority. I also devote time to the ACE program, which is the architecture, construction, and engineering programs that support introducing high school students to the AEC profession. I also am a member of a professional organization, the AIA, as well as our State Board for Registration of Architects. So that by example, I'm showing not just minority students, but also women and girls in K through 5, middle school, high school, and college, that they have representation in those spaces where you don't see too many minority participation or too many minority faces at the table.
Yeah.
In addition to the dollars you donate, I know this is longer than you expected. It needs to be said.
Absolutely.
To the community is also just as important as the dollars.
Absolutely. And I think that you're 100% correct. And that didn't take too long because you're right. We all need to hear it and be reminded that if you don't have the dollars, you can make the time, right? Selena, quickly, what are your thoughts around using your green power in the community?
Thank you. Quickly, well, when I first got started, I didn't have money to donate to anyone. So I volunteered as much as possible to show that I was engaged in the community. And that led into where I would be able to serve on various boards and invited to serve on boards. However, when I'm asked to serve on a board, if I don't feel like I want to contribute financially to that board, then I'm not going to serve on that board. And so my contributions financially will be based off of my charitable giving through those boards. And there may be other initiatives that I have set aside or foundations that I may have in mind, to where I've built a relationship with whomever the director is or what their cause is, and I may be a volunteer instead of just a board member. I may mentor Carver or some other school in that capacity. But ultimately, what I also do is allow my employees to volunteer as well. In our job codes and as we track our time on what we do, we have a job code for a community service. And so if an employee wants to volunteer time to Habitat for Humanity or Boy Scouts or ACE or whatever they may want to do, if they have a conversation with me and say, hey, Selena, I want to allocate so many hours, as long as there's not causing our projects to suffer, we can allot so many hours for that employee to contribute back to the community as well, because I do believe that it's more than just what I'm giving personally to the community, but my team is a part of our culture, that we embrace that as well.
Yeah. That's such a good thing to do, is allow the people that you're paying to go and spend that time doing that. So that's wonderful. Bryant, if you can say your answer in like 3 sentences, I would be so pleased with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I think what Selena and Nalanda are saying is that we have multiple forms of capital as entrepreneurs, right? And they are highlighting sort of social and relational capital, where they're taking their time and talent to help benefit organizations in this community. And the other thing I would say is this, particularly in 2021 and the day that we live in, that there's also, such thing as moral and ethical capital. So we've got an obligation to be visible, to make folks see that there are people of color who are in positions where you can use your influence for the uplift of our community. So, that's what I think about it all.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And for all of you who are watching, I hope you are enjoying the AG Gaston Conference. Thank you for joining us for this Green Power Money in Action panel. And continue to enjoy the conference, and we will see you soon. Thank you to all of our panelists. You all have a great day.
At BBVA, we're more than just a bank. Every day, we're creating opportunities beyond our branches. When we help families save, we invest in the future. When we help businesses meet payroll, we pay it forward. And when we help communities grow, we build lifelong connections. We're as committed to helping clients grow their portfolios as we are to shrinking our environmental footprint, and to supporting our employees as we fight for a more equitable future. At BBVA, we're not just a bank. We're a group of people dedicated to a higher purpose, bringing the age of opportunity to everyone. BBVA, creating opportunities.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to bring you greetings on behalf of BBVA. My name is Yvette Payne, and I am the Birmingham District Retail Executive for BBVA. Today, we recognize, respect, and pay tribute to the legacy of Dr. A.G. Gaston and the A.G. Gaston Conference. Thank you for allowing us to partner with you, and we look forward to doing more things with you in the future. BBVA is dedicated to the community, and to that end, we have renewed our 5-year community commitment to pledge $15 billion in lending and investments supporting low to moderate income individuals and neighborhoods. $7.2 billion of that is in lending. As of November of 2020, BBVA provided $2.49 billion in small business lending. We are here to support you. We appreciate the cause and the commitment that you have to the community. Thank you all for attending the conference. Thanks for allowing us to participate, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
We have to consider that A.G. Gaston was many things. He was an undertaker. He was an insurance man. He was an educator. He started the Booker T. Washington Business College. He was a banker. But most of all, and sometimes often forgotten, was that A.G. Gaston was a philanthropist. He was able to give back, and he had seen young men, young boys with not a lot to do. He started this A.G. Gaston Boys Club, as it was then. It's now grown to the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club. And of all of his enterprises, it's the one that survived and still is in operation today. The Find a Need and Fill It was one of Gaston's most famous recommendations for success. And we find him doing that all through his business career. It was essential and an integral part of his success. In my opinion, if Dr. Gaston were alive today, he would be elated at the fact that there is an A.G. Gaston Conference. I think that he would sit there and he'd be proud, he'd be honored, he'd be very modest, he would be very humble, but he would also be very, I think, encouraged that his people here in Birmingham, remember and think so highly of him and what he gave back to our community that we honor him in this way every year.
Hello again. I'm Deborah Nelson of Elevate Communications. Our next speaker is Maggie Anderson. She's the co-founder of the Empowerment Experiment and author of Our Black Year, One Family's Quest to Buy Black in America's Racially Divided Economy. She is an acclaimed author and speaker fighting racism, driving entrepreneurship, and inspiring and teaching economic solidarity and business diversity. Please help me welcome to the A.G. Gaston Conference, their virtual stage for a plenary session, Maggie Anderson. Bob?
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you so much to the A.G. Gaston Conference co-founders, Bob and Gaynell, the staff, the sponsors, the partners, all of our esteemed public servants from the city and state, all the fantastic guests and volunteers, and my fellow speakers, and all the members of this beautiful A.G. Gaston Conference family. Thank you all for being here as we plan for and persist towards economic progress, justice, and empowerment by growing Black businesses during these turbulent and trying times. About 10 years ago, Publishers Weekly, in reviewing my book, called this issue, The Lack of Support of Black Businesses and the Rapid Exit of Dollars from Black Communities, a dynamite subject, and my family's experiment historic and effective. And the Library Journal said my book successfully illuminates the roadblocks faced by Black business owners and the racial divide that continues to persist in the U.S. economy. They also said that my book will appeal to students of sociology and economics, as well as all those looking for inspiration to effect positive change in their communities. Alfred Edmond, editor of Black Enterprise, said, "The Andersons' economic odyssey is nothing short of heroic." But we didn't create the empowerment experiment, then see it through. We didn't impose that sacrifice on our then 2- and 3-year-old daughters for kudos or great book reviews. We did it to get here. We did it because our Black community has a strong history of economic unity and entrepreneurial excellence, as evidenced by our A.G. Gaston and as is celebrated by this conference. But economic unity and Black business success should not just be our history, it should be our legacy. And until it is, it remains our responsibility. Starting even before emancipation, African Americans amassed great business power. Cities like Tulsa and Durham are the most documented examples. These cities came to be called Black Wall Streets. African Americans, our Black community, we built schools, churches, banks, insurance companies, grocery stores, hotel chains, drug stores, department stores, hardware stores, daycare centers, hospital systems, entire farming regions, actual stock brokerages. All kinds of shops and professionals thrived, all Black owned. And in the early 1900s, Black entrepreneurship was at its peak. Leaders like King grew up studying and reveling W.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, and Booker T. Washington, titans of industry, studying business, reading books like The Negro in Business when he was at Morehouse, met with business leaders like A.G. Gaston all the time, hung out with Cirillo McSween, who owned several McDonald's restaurants, served as the treasurer to the SCLC, and put his own money and the SCLC's money into Black-owned banks. Young King grew up surrounded by business owners who took care of the community, risked their lives to be business owners so that they could take care of the community. A grocery store owner and an owner of a large printing company created the first branch of the NAACP in Mississippi. They funded our fight for the vote there. And when they won, their names, these business owners, were the first ones on the voter rolls. When they called the meeting within hours of Rosa Parks' arrest, the business owners, lawyers, pharmacists, grocers, barbers, and bankers, publishers, the Black union leaders, they all came to offer financial support. when the Black-owned taxi companies and service station owners came to offer their support. And during the boycott, when the marchers lost their jobs and the businesses burned down and the taxi drivers were jailed for giving rise to the boycotters and the business leaders were attacked for leading the movement, the Black banks stepped in and the Black funeral homes stepped in. They built war chests for the lawsuits, the protests, to keep attacked businesses afloat and to cover the lost wages, the death and destruction from the terrorism of the racists. Dr. King was not hoping and hollering for a $10,000 sponsorship from GM or GE to pay the cost for and pave the way to freedom. The civil rights wasn't brought to you by. When they bombed the churches, the businesses were there. When they hanged Black men, the businesses were there. When they raped the sisters, the businesses were there. When they enacted a new racist law, enabled more violence and injustice, when they denied other dreams and dismissed another death, the businesses were there. They were there for us. Yes, Madam C.J. Walker, the mother of the Black hair care industry and the first Black woman millionaire, made those millions, then enabled the NAACP and the National Conference on Lynching. We were making our own way, even as we suffered from exploitation, terrorism, and discrimination, even as we endured the ongoing lack of reckoning, inclusion, and investment from our country. Even with all that, hundreds of millions we created and recycled in our Black community. The dollar would stay in the community for 3 or more years before integration. Unemployment was at the same level as that of whites and sometimes lower than that of whites nationally from 1880 all the way through 1940, lower because Black people employed each other in our self-sustained, vibrant neighborhoods in Tulsa and Durham and Tampa and Louisville's Russell neighborhood and Sistrunk Boulevard and Fort Lauderdale, Bronzeville and Chicago, Harlem, Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Magic City in Birmingham, Lincoln Avenue in Cincinnati, and so many more. Black neighborhoods signified genius and greatness, soul and success, elegance and entrepreneurial excellence. And that's why racists and supremacists so vehemently and so violently resisted the success of the Black business community. Over 90% of the thousands of lynchings that happened during Reconstruction and Jim Crow were of business owners. Terrorism. When the area they called Black Wall Street in Tulsa was bombed and then burned by racists, crowds watched the destruction of that community, called it a Negro barbecue. I told you about those business owners that launched the NAACP in Mississippi, Mr. Lee and Mr. Quartz. They were grocery store owners, and they registered hundreds of Black voters. For that, the two business owners were threatened, but they fought on. For us, for me, for you. Lee was a preacher, and he got shot and killed fighting our fight. Quartz, he was shot too, but he lived. Then the local white bank stopped lending to him. The local white gas station stopped servicing him. See, when they couldn't kill the business owner, they tried to kill the business. But hear me, Quartz started pooling money in the Black community so that the community could purchase its own gas station, and they did, and Quartz survived, and his business thrived, and he kept supporting the NAACP and kept fighting for the vote, and the Black people in Mississippi were able to vote. Black Americans were able to vote because of Mr. Gaston, Mr. Lee, Mr. Quartz, and so many more entrepreneurs like them. We could not win then without the businesses, and we could not win now without strong Black-owned businesses. Bottom line, as I close this history lesson, Black-owned businesses equaled Black power, prosperity, and progress in America. They made America great. We've always had to push and prod America towards its greatness. And America has fallen way short of its ideal, its promise, its greatness when it comes to economic equality and justice. It's time for us to push and prod and provoke America again. Because I want my little girls to know that not only they can buy from JCPenney's, that was the 50s and 60s, or work at JCPenney's. We fought for that. My girls need to know that they can own JCPenney. So maybe it's time we fight for that too. Let's unite like they did and fight for an America, Gaston's America, with all kinds of people shopping at a retailer or grocer started by a Black family, like Mr. Lee's family or Mr. Quartz family. In Gaston's America, all kinds of people are looking for Black franchises and consumer goods brands and designers, growing Black family-owned global conglomerates, depending on our expertise and professionals, banking with us, staying in our hotels, just like we do everyone else. Let's unite, all of us, for an America where an already broken and bereft Black neighborhood is not the only place where every other ethnic group and majority enterprise can set up shop and achieve the American dream. You know, an America where there's some reciprocity for that. Manifest and thriving Black-owned businesses in Little Italy, Chinatown, Koreatown, Greektown, Downtown, and the affluent, predominantly white suburbs. Why not? An America where it's not a ridiculous notion to a Black child that someone like her can own a grocery chain or a drugstore, that the toaster her mama buys at Walmart, the paint her uncle got from the Home Depot was made by a Black family company, where that Black child can go to the corner candy store or bakery and see an owner who looks like and looks out for her. An America where middle-class, working-class Black families and Black-owned businesses and storefronts and professionals are welcomed, a draw, not a deterrent or a disturbance, in burgeoning, beautiful neighborhoods. I'm fighting for that America for 12 years now, before Trump, before George Floyd's murder. It's been 12 years since the empowerment experiment, my family's public stand and study to buy Black only for an entire year. You know our stand and sacrifice dominated headlines, front pages, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, LA Times, New York Times, big major segments on CBS News, MSNBC, Fox News, ABC News, BET News, Tom Joyner, Black Enterprise, Essence, countless TV and radio shows. We touched millions all over the world. Then I wrote my book, Our Black Year, which is a tribute to our country's Black business history and a detailed account of our stand. Kellogg at Northwestern, one of the best business schools in the world, completed the landmark study based on my family's receipts and the data we collected. That study proved that close to 1 million new American jobs could be created if just some of us would make small changes and sacrifices to buy Black. Here are a few more highlights from the empowerment experiment. We spent or otherwise invested a little more than $94,000 that year with Black businesses that we would not have otherwise. Over 90% of our spending went directly into underserved Black areas. We went without. We are disappointed by the number of markets and industries where African Americans still suffer from a complete lack of representation. We're disheartened by our own people's lack of pride and solidarity. 2009, our hearts ached seeing up close what my people, Black people, have to go through in these retail and food deserts. Can't get a fresh piece of fish or a banana? Forced to settle for inferior goods and services, extortionate prices, and enduring disrespect from shop owners who don't look like and won't live in the community, but come into the community every day, remove that padlock from the steel gates or bars, and take Black money through the slit in the bulletproof glass, and then at the end of the day, pull that steel door back down and put that padlock back on and drive home to their suburbs and enclaves to build up their local tax bases and school systems and send their kids to college and buy their dream homes and vacations with poor Black people's hard-earned wealth. It was hurtful and fearful being called a racist, a Nazi, and the other N-word, getting death threats and hate mail. And it still hurts my heart when I think about what I put my baby girls through. They're begging me, their mama, for fruit and toys, going to school crying because the shoes are too tight and belly poking out of their shirts, and coming home crying because they were teased. All because it took me 5 months to find one Black-owned shop offering toddler clothing and shoes. I made my girls eat gas station food like old putrid bologna and overpriced, oversugared cereal, I guess it was, for dinner, because the one Black-owned grocery store we found closed 5 months before we finished our experiment. All those businesses we sought and supported, we loved and lived off of, the ones you read about in the book, not just the grocery store, they're all gone. And then 1 month after we finished our year, my mother died in my arms, losing a hard-fought battle with pancreatic cancer. My immigrant mother, a Cuban farm girl who never made it to high school, but was wise enough to teach me that despite what our Cuban peers in Florida told us, our being from Cuba didn't make us not Black or less Black. That just meant our ancestors got dropped off a little earlier in the triangle trade. That was my Mima. Mima was sick and dying the whole year, and I know that she suffered longer than she would have just to see her only daughter, her only American-born child, fulfill this pledge to our Black community in our country. Yes, we lost a lot that year, but we learned a lot too, and that's really significant because before that year, John and I thought we had it all and that we knew it all. My husband, John, is from Detroit. He left to get his undergraduate degree in economics from Harvard. Then this courageous and gorgeous nerd got his MBA in economics and entrepreneurial finance at Northwestern. He's a financial advisor now. So if any of you are looking for Black entrepreneurs to support, take it from your speaker. He is the best, he is brilliant, and he is definitely Black. I grew up in Miami, in an underserved area called Liberty City. And then I went to college at Emory in Atlanta, where I was blessed to serve as an aide to our recently passed civil rights hero, Congressman John Lewis. After Atlanta, I headed to Chicago for graduate school, but I went to the University of Chicago for my MBA, not Northwestern, and my law degree, and was able to serve with and learn from another civil rights hero, then law professor and community organizer, Barack Obama, turned 44th President of the United States of America. And we fell in love while we were both in graduate school. Now that's John and I, not the president and I. Y'all don't stick Michelle on me. We found great jobs at big companies, bought a home in a pricey suburb, had our own 2 beautiful little girls, and we're living out our fancy fairy tale life. And we supported the community, sort of. We were active in the youth ministry at our Black church. John's a mentor with 100 Black men. We voted Black. We loved Black. We hurt when Black people got shot on the South Side. We got happy when Black folks were nominated for awards and the Black coach made it to the Super Bowl. We're teaching our daughters to love themselves, their God, their neighbor, their country, and their skin. We were Black, just not buying Black, just like so many most proud Black people. But everything else, very, very Black. Y'all know what I'm talking about. But hey, we tied once in a while. We donated to the UNCF. Wasn't that enough? Philanthropy is commendable, but it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice which make philanthropy necessary. Dr. King said that. So what are those circumstances of economic injustice, and what were we supposed to do about them? In Asian American communities, a dollar circulates among the banks and retailers and professionals for 28 days before it goes outside. Our Jewish friends keep their dollar for 19 to 21 days. And that's why those groups have the lowest unemployment and incarceration rates and the highest household incomes and educational achievement. In the Black community, the dollar lives for 6 hours. It used to be 3 years or more. 6 hours. 6 hours. This is why the Black community suffers and is so far behind. This is why racial disharmony and racist systems and structures grow. These are the circumstances of economic injustice our King told us we cannot overlook. But right around King's death, we did start to overlook. And that's when their hatred of our ascendants was ultimately matched by our hunger for acceptance. King saw this happening before his murder, started to fear that our civil rights victories might have come at the expense of our business and economic ones. After the boycott, after the March on Washington, after the Voting Rights Act, after integration, when most of the bombs and fires and lynchings and terror dissipated, our economic solidarity and our entrepreneurial spirit dwindled as well. We saw this. He saw this. And he saw that we were losing the economic fight and our economic might. In a public address in his famous mountaintop speech that he delivered the day before he was killed, he pivoted and devoted the last half of that speech on a call to action to unite for economic justice and empowerment, not just civil rights. He spoke of our collective buying power and urged an economic withdrawal from businesses on the record for discriminating against Black employees and mistreating Black customers. And not just that, King specifically fought for Black-owned businesses, not just the right to go to segregated white-owned businesses. Here's the quote from King, the one you won't see on TV or hear on the radio or see in the history books. He said, "We've got to strengthen Black institutions. I call upon you to take your money out of the banks downtown and deposit your money into Tri-State Bank. We want a bank-in movement in Memphis. We're just telling you to follow what we're doing. Put your money there." We didn't. Instead, in the 2 decades after Dr. King's murder, it became fashionable to abandon the Black-owned banks and businesses to show and prove that we were good enough to buy from businesses once denied to us. Within 20 years after we lost King, 85% of our over 120 Black-owned banks disappeared. In the 1930s, grocery stores represented the largest category of Black-owned businesses. We had 6,400. When Kellogg did the famous study based on my family's experiment in 2010, they could only find evidence of 8 to 12 groceries owned by Black firms in our country. That's terrible for Black people and America. In North Philadelphia, a predominantly Black area, for example, over 90% of the businesses there are not locally or Black owned. And what's happening there is representative of all the similarly situated Black neighborhoods across America. I'm sure it's not too different in the predominantly Black areas of Birmingham. You know that, you've seen that, and you know it's not right. Black beauty supply stores in Black neighborhoods with 100% Black clientele. Less than 3% across America are Black owned. And not just that, not just the banks, the groceries, and the beauty supply stores. We lost Black hair care too. The one industry birthed by the Black community, belonging to us, celebrating us, sustaining us, helping us, especially Black women, thrive and achieve. the American dream. In 1986, again, less than 2 decades after King died, Irving J. Botner, then CEO of Revlon, when asked about competition from Black-owned firms in the Black hair care industry, Botner said this to Newsweek: in the next couple of years, the Black-owned businesses will disappear. They'll all be sold to white companies. And he was right. Sport and Wave, Les Jam, Carefree Curl, Strength of Nature, Cream of Nature, Dark and Lovely, Smooth and Shine, Dark and Natural, Stay Soft Fro, Carol's Daughter, all owned by L'Oreal, a French company owned by Liliane Bettencourt, who died in 2017 as the world's richest woman. By 2000, L'Oreal owned all of the large Black hair care companies. And a couple of years ago, Unilever, a Dutch company, put the nail in the coffin when they bought Nuvian Brands. Sisters, that's all the Shea Moisture products. All these brands and companies are no longer Black owned. And the fantastic Black owned companies we do still have can't get into the big retailers because of the L'Oreals and the Unilevers that edge them out. Less than 5% of the Black hair care section represents Black owned companies. All those jobs, businesses, dreams, all those billions and billions in Black intergenerational wealth and entrepreneurship from our Black hair, just gone. And no one even cares. Why? That's what Botner wanted. That's what he promised, planned for, and predicted. Our own Langston Hughes also predicted what would happen to us without economic unity. He wrote this poem called The Ballad of Booker T. The tallest tower can tumble down if it not be rooted in solid ground. So being a far-seeing and practical man, he said, train your head, your heart, and your hand. Your fate is here and not afar. So let down your bucket where you are. Put your money there, King said. Let down your bucket, Langston said. So I pour into my bucket every day. My coffee, my home alarm system, my dry cleaner, my pediatrician, dentist, neurologist, optometrist, my reading glasses, John's contacts and his glasses, the wine we drink, vodka, whiskey, pizza, popcorn, our seasonings and sauces. I got Patty's sweet potato pies, our nightclubs, John's dress shirts, his suits, ties, cufflinks, all my makeup, my perfume, my hair products, the restaurants we go to, the coffee shops we go to, my daughter's orthodontist, our dentist, Corey's dermatologist, John's chiropractor, all my designer purses and shoes, my nail salon, my spa. What else? Oh, yes, my mortgage, all Black owned. This is how I live my life. I'm not some depressed and overworked activist because I have to look for Black owned firms. Once I let my bucket down, that part is not as hard as you think. You can open an account now while you're listening to me at One United Bank, the largest Black-owned bank, 100% internet friendly. No excuses. I have money in 3 Black community banks. Now, I have money in other banks too, but when I think about Dr. King being killed, asking me to put my money into a Black-owned bank, I found a way to put some of my money into Black-owned banks. How can we even say we want economic empowerment and equality, and we won't even put money into our banks? How many Black-owned banks do you have money in? This is not a rhetorical question. Or am I asking too much? Did King ask too much when he urged us to support Black institutions and banks? Did Langston ask too much when he told us to let our bucket down where we are? Am I wasting my time today because companies like Hennessy, with over 80% of their U.S. revenues coming from the Black community and no Black distributors, no significant advertising in Black-owned media, no accounts in Black-owned banks, with that kind of money, there should be Hennessy hospitals in Harlem, a new chemistry lab at every HBCU, and Hennessy should have funded the new A.G. Gostin Black Entrepreneurship and Empowerment Research and Action Center, and I should be teaching at it. Seriously, though, 80% and not even a supplier diversity program. They thrive in while Black communities, their consumers communities, are under attack and falling apart. But no one talks about that. No one asks for it, does, or demands better. And because we don't ask and we don't talk about it, we don't take the next step and let our bucket down for Heritage Link Brands, a wonderful Black-owned wine importer owned by husband and wife Harvard MBAs Corey and Selena Cuff. Heritage, my wine company, is the largest company in the wine industry to trade and sell Africa's Black-made wines. One of those winemakers is House of Mandela, led by the women of the Mandela family, Makasiwi and Tukwini, respectively the daughter and granddaughter of Nelson Mandela. Together, Heritage, House of Mandela, and people like me who buy their wine, we create jobs for Black people in South Africa and America. One of my favorite Heritage Link Brands wines is called Bukatrabe, and I drink a lot of Bukatrabe. A lot of Bukatrabe. Not every day, just on the weekends, because during the week, I might end a long day of speaking and preaching and teaching with a little whiskey. Bob knows what I'm talking about. Uncle Nearest whiskey. Uncle Nearest whiskey. I got a little bit right here. I'm not going to drink it now. It's a little early for that, but I'll be ready when the day's over. Award-winning Uncle Nearest whiskey is owned by a Black family run by a Black woman, Fawn Weaver, who named her premium whiskey company after the slave and master distiller known as Nearest, who is credited for teaching a young Jack Daniels the craft of whiskey making. Now, Sister Weaver represents and reinvests in the Black community with her success, even as she faces unfair, utterly racist treatment in the tight-knit liquor and hospitality industries. Every day, I drink that Booker Trabe wine or that Uncle Nearest whiskey. Every day, I make that sacrifice because ain't nothing Maggie Anderson won't do for the movement. So if I have to drink that wine or drink that whiskey neat for my people, I will. Each sip is for the movement, for King, for Selena and Carrie, for the Mandelas, for Dawn Weaver and dear Uncle Nearest. It's for Africa. Now, I'm not sure I can get you to march like I march or to create change today, but can I get somebody to have a drink with me? Come on, y'all. Yes, I've been giving you a lot of history today as it is Black History Month, but I want to ask you before I go, what are they going to say about us that we did put our money there, that we did not overlook the circumstances of economic injustice? Because I don't want to live like that anymore. You? Is that how you want to live? That's how you want us to be? Do you really accept that this is where we're supposed to be, where Gaston and King and Lee and Courts thought we would be by now? Because if you're not ready for what AG Gaston Conference really means, then maybe I should just give up. Maybe we all should just give up, give in, believe what they believe, keep proving Botner right, have everyone else benefit from and thrive off the Black hair care industry and live off of, but not live in Black neighborhoods, abandon our history, our legacy, our destiny because it's just too hard and your family is doing all right. That's why our Kellogg study, based on our year, we intentionally honed in on Black consumers for the study. And we asked and welcomed all Americans who support Black businesses in the Black community. But for the study, we looked at Black households with $75,000 HHI or more. Those of us with a little more money to work with, and see if we could increase our spending in the community from the pathetic 2 to 3% that we're at now to over 10%, just 10%. No one is saying only by Black. But if we just spend a little bit more, we could create close to 1 million jobs in our community, new American jobs from the money we already have and currently spend, just 10% going to the quality businesses we already have and currently neglect. No government program, no corporate donation. This is our chance. This is the challenge of 2021. I'm talking about big things here. And I'm talking to our sponsors and partners, our friends and allies too. I just don't want to hear about how you're going to use the Black caterer at the next community breakfast. I'm not asking for more Black Lives Matter banners on your website. All that is nice and necessary, but at the same time, ceremonial and cursory. It whiffs of charity, not change. Pats on the back, not progress. I want real progress. I want justice for George Floyd. I want justice. And I'm not asking Walmart or Gucci or Citibank for it. I'm not begging the government for it either. I'm hopeful, but not holding my breath for President Biden to deliver it. Now, don't get me wrong. Corporate America, the big brands and retailers and banks, they owe us with our talent and our buying power. We've grown and glorified the biggest brands, designers, and retailers. The American government owes us. With our blood and brilliance, we built this country, we fought for this country, delivered its economic foundation, and had no equity, no return. They owe us, and it's time they pay up. But what about me? What about you? I owe us too. I owe my people, my community, my culture, my ancestors. Oh, my love, my faith, my solidarity, my unconditional support, my on-call, on-demand, ride or die back. I owe all of that, and I'm paying up every day, not just with my words and my tears and my hashtags. I pay up with my smarts, my strength, my spend, my choice, and my voice. Every day, I use all of that. Every day, I fought like they fought, and I buy like they bought. Every day, I'm wiping the sweat of Sojourner. I'm holding out the outstretched hand of Harriet. I'm bathed in the blood of America. Every day, I'm marching over that bridge in Selma with you, John Lewis, right now. With Mima's blood still pumping in my veins, with our ancestors' blood still never vindicated. I fight on, I buy on, for Gaston, for King, for Lee, for Courts, for their distant, deferred, and deterred America. I'll close like this. Some of you are new to this movement. You saw the rise and rule of racism in 2020. And let me explain something as I welcome you to our struggle, this opportunity to make a difference. You don't fight racism and inequality by just promising to hire a couple of Black folks or promising to up your diversity spend and advertising. The promises don't show sincere empathy and respect for the struggle my husband, John, and my friend, Bob Dickerson, faced to thrive as a Black entrepreneur and simply survive as a Black man. The promises, they help the PR, but they do nothing to address the pain. Are you ready to really partner with the A.G. Gaston Conference, the Birmingham Resource Center, invest in some Black-run mutual portfolios, Black banks and credit unions, venture capital firms, and real estate funds? Are you ready to ask the big corporations you are with or that you engage, your big funders, about the Black firms and their supply chains? Do that. We'll do our part too. Then we'll celebrate together with some Uncle Nearest or some Buca Trabe. I got plenty just waiting on you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love you. I love you all. I love you, A.G. Gaston Conference. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Alex Morton. I'm the Birmingham Market President for Iberia Bank. It's different being virtual, but yet we're still making a great impact. And so I really thank you for your participation at the A.G. Gaston Conference. Iberia Bank and the conference have long been partners together, and we're so excited to once again team up to make this event as successful as it has been in years past. We're better together. That's one of our themes at Iberia Bank. And we believe that working with A.G. Gaston Conference, we're going to make a better together Birmingham. Better access for financial services, better opportunities for our community. So really want to welcome everyone on the panel. Want to welcome everyone here that's tuning in virtually. And thank you for your participation. At Iberia Bank, there is also some other news I just want to make aware of everyone is that we're still the same bank that you know for a long time for this Birmingham community, but we're now part of the First Horizon organization. A merger of equals just happened at the end of last year, and you'll start seeing some signage change probably later on this year as we'll move to the First Horizon name. But please know that we're still the same Iberia Bank you've known for a long time, the same people, the same great opportunities that we provide for our community, and the same commitment to our community. With that, I want to kick off this conference and really wish everyone a great day, a great opportunity to share, and look forward to seeing everyone soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to Iberia First Horizon Bank for always supporting the A.G. Gaston Conference and our mission to create economic empowerment in our community. You know, today has been such a great day, and I certainly hope everyone is enjoying the conference. And I hate to say this, but this is going to conclude day one of our conference. I hope you took down some notes and you feel ready to get to work. Hey, be sure to know that you can share, you can like the conference, and if you do, use the hashtag AGGC 2021. That's AGGC 2021. Now, this conference wouldn't be a success without our great sponsors. So once again, we'd like to thank Regions Bank, Renaissance Bank, BBVA, the Birmingham Times, Wells Fargo, Iberia, New Horizon Bank, Alabama Power Company, Discover, PNC Bank, the Birmingham Waterworks Board, Valley National Bank, South State Bank, Brassfield and Goree, Service First Bank, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama, and many, many more. So we've seen lots of comments coming from the audience. We know that's because of our amazing panelists and our guest speakers. They provided some information that we all can truly use. So thank you so much for your participation, for taking the time to share so much wealth and so much knowledge today. So I mentioned earlier in the broadcast that we'd be giving away 2 iPads to 2 lucky attendees. Well, it's time to announce the winners, and they are, can I get a drum roll, please? Anyway, congratulations to Michael Gould and to Lawrence Conaway. So to claim your prize, please send your contact information to me, bdickerson@bbrc.biz or info@bbrc.biz. Now, be sure to join us tomorrow at 9 a.m. for day 2 of the 17th Annual A.G. Gaston Virtual Conference. We have more dynamic thought leaders, community advocates, and business owners. Be safe, and we'll see you same time tomorrow. God bless you.